Hey you guys, I'm Kristina. This is Say More, a podcast about the kinds of conversations that invite us to go deeper. I'm a therapist, and this is a space for honest reflection on what shapes us, from early unconscious patterns to how we actually change and grow. Some episodes explore theory and ideas, and others are real, reflective talks with therapists and other people I love talking to. People who are on the path or simply curious about growth and healing. At times, I follow what's alive, letting topics emerge from my own life, my guests, from sessions, or from whatever's been coming up lately. If you're drawn to depth without needing perfection and want a space that holds both pain and possibility, you're in the right place. I'm really glad you're here. Let's say more. In this episode, I sit down with Dr. Jenn Kennedy, who has a PhD in clinical sexology and is a board-certified sex therapist. We dive into what it truly means to feel safe with your partner, the power of the phrase, "I'm with you." We explore how attachment styles show up even in the bedroom and what it takes to rebuild trust after betrayal and the pathways to healing from trauma. We also talk about sexual exploration, reconnection with pleasure, and how safety and attunement create the foundation for intimacy. Whether it's navigating affairs, understanding attachment dynamics, or reclaiming pleasure, this conversation is full of insights for anyone looking to deepen connection in their relationships. You can find more about Jenn's work at pleasureproject.us. Enjoy. We are here with Dr. Jenn Kennedy. She is a local Santa Barbara therapist and specializes in human sexuality, and we are so grateful to have you here today.
Good to be here. Yeah.
So, how's your day going? Just to start out, where are we?
It's good. I know it's the end of the week. It was a busy week, so I'm just winding down and yeah, it's
Yes.
kind of mix of clients and other things and yeah, it's, it's good.
Good. What are you working on these days, like clinical, and then what are some of your other projects that you have going on?
I feel like I am like switching gears. I actually this my day today has been trying to sync these two suckers. This is like the hats that I wear, right? I have my own clients. I also have a group practice. So I've got two offices, two suites of offices, and I am trying to get the music running in the second office because the music went down. But just keeping those running and keeping all the little parts up and going with them. And then I'm also speaking quite a bit and been working on a book proposal, and I just signed up with a speaker coach. So I'm going to be working on a new keynote. So I'm just working in segments, shifting gears and doing some practical things, and then also doing some creative things, and then doing some clinical things. So it's a
Nice.
mix.
That's
Yeah.
good. So running two practices, it sounds like your own and the group practice, or
Yeah.
okay. Wow. Wow. I'm so curious about the different parts of your work and life right now. I would love to hear how you were drawn into this work. And we spoke a little bit about a theme we could talk about today, women's empowerment. What comes to mind when you think about that in your work?
Yeah. So I got into this work later in life, and I did that with an eye on couples. That's always been my direction is working with couples. And within that frame, definitely like my dissertation work and a lot of the individual work is around women's sexual empowerment specifically because that's something I relate to. That was part of my own journey. And it's an avenue that I feel like doesn't get addressed that often. And so I see a lot of men too, but women in particular, I feel like haven't had a lot of support around their own empowerment. And so I see a lot of women that are over 50, like 45, 50 plus, up to maybe 70s, early 70s. And yeah, that population in particular just hasn't felt terribly empowered.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love working with them and the conversations around body, around relationship, around sexuality, I think are just really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So, what are the themes that you notice around that specific population?
Well, menopause is so big right now. Like, I don't know, you see, there's all these celebrities that are talking about their menopause, like Drew Barrymore, and right, there's just been a lot of talk. And I'm in perimenopause, so it's top of mind. But that transitionary time of empty nesting, that's more like the late 40s. But when women are, and couples are starting to say, okay, the kids are out the door or on their way out the door to college or to whatever, their
Mhm.
own individuation, and then starting to look at what do I want? What matters to me? What's my next chapter looking like? And reassessing quality of life, quality of relationship, quality of sex is
Mhm.
definitely part of that conversation. And so are we going to stay together? If so, renegotiating needs happens at
Mhm.
that age quite often because they don't have to be running kids around to things if assuming that they were in that configuration. Also career, if you look at the trajectory that typically is happening at that point in life. Typically people are in mid to high career and so they're pretty successful, but they're starting to look at what else is there. What
Mhm.
do I want in terms of work-life balance? They're not trying to climb so much. They've arrived and but they're starting to have some aches and pains. So it's like the conversation is shifting a little bit as they get into their 50s and 60s, or we get into our 50s and 60s, of quality of life. And also starting to look towards taking care of parents, planning for the later chapters of what do I want. So
Yeah.
I enjoy those existential conversations too quite a bit.
Yeah. Those are definitely existential questions around such
Mm-hmm.
major life transitions around identity, career, relationship, children. So, sexuality, do you see that as part of just one aspect usually in your work, or is it more focused around? I guess it probably depends who the client is, but
I put my shingle out there. I'm a sexologist, meaning I did a PhD in and around human sexuality. So most people are coming into me for sex, which encompasses sex and intimacy and relational issues.
Mhm.
So that's usually a central theme of why they're arriving to see me in particular. So they're not usually just coming in for general anxiety, depression, that type of things. Usually it's related to their sex life or their intimacy to be broader.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think gets in the way of people being more comfortable with intimacy or getting what they need or want from that?
Well, age is a factor in that. And so, again, we're considering in my population,
Yes.
which is the older set, different things than I would say is the younger set. But for this population, things that get in the way are certainly cultural overlay. If you've been raised in, if you're 50 plus, you've been raised in the 70s or earlier, there are messages certainly for women around being pleasing, agreeable, um, being more in a supportive role. Well, that all translates into the bedroom too. So their needs haven't necessarily been expressed and therefore likely met over the years. There's also been standards set up around beauty and around presentation that might feel impossible as we age, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's a difficult message to hear and to uphold. And so that starts to really, I mean, it's always hard throughout the life cycle. It's hard to meet the beauty standards, but especially as we age, that starts to really factor in.
Mm-hmm.
Aging just comes with challenges in general.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just personal psychological issues, but then there's also interpersonal. So have you drifted apart? Uh, are you carrying resentments? How have you negotiated needs together?
Yeah.
How financially independent or stable do you feel?
Mm.
So it's interesting because sex links to a lot of these other things. It's not directly there, but it is actually interrelated. I feel like sometimes I say it's a microcosm of the larger relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but it manifests sometimes directly linked and sometimes it's a little sleeper cell related to the others. Some people can have a great sex life even though their general relationship is not good and vice versa, but typically I see a relationship, a correlative between the two.
What shows up in the room when there's a couple, let's say a heterosexual couple, and they're in this age range? What's the first part of the process of getting into work?
Yeah, so I had a few new clients recently and I I always get a little bit nervous. It's so interesting when somebody new is coming in because I'm like, what's going to present? What are they
Yeah.
coming in with? What do they want? Couples are always going to have unique, there's two people, so there's going to be different maybe levels of buy-in,
Hmm.
or oftentimes one person is more motivated and the other person might feel like they're being dragged in and to be convinced to have more sex, which they don't want. So I oftentimes have to be careful and make sure that there's good alignment with both partners so that both people feel like I see their perspective, I'm going to respect their history, and we have to have a really honest, because rapport is huge, obviously, for them to feel safe enough. They're going to be telling me super personal things. I mean, down to like their grooming or their preferences around their erotic habits, to things that can feel really like embarrassing and very personal. So they have to trust me. And there has to be some room for humor and for historical mishaps and that kind of thing. So things are happening on several levels as they're coming in, right? We're getting to know each other. And so there's this relationship building that's happening through me asking them where they've been as a couple, who are they. I'm watching how they're speaking as much as what they're saying. We're conversational, but we're slowly dropping in. I'm assessing how relational are they to one another? How are they speaking to and with one another? I'm looking at how they're telling their story and how much agreement is there. I'm looking to see, is there any strengths in there, or are they totally on opposite sides, feeling really at odds? How much hurt is there that we're looking at? Has this been a problem forever? Was their sex life ever good? Was their intimacy, which is different, ever good? Are we rebuilding, or are we starting from like really ground zero? So there's just lots of things happening simultaneously. It's actually quite complex, and it's really, I think, interesting.
You said you get nervous. What makes you the most nervous about like meeting a new couple that you're working with?
I worry sometimes that they're not going to trust me. They're not going to they're not going to open up, or they're not going to think I'm the right fit, or I'm going to say the wrong thing and it's going to alienate them. I'm pretty direct,
Hmm.
and I do use humor, and sometimes it doesn't land well. um, and that's okay, right? That's okay. That's my style.
Hmm.
And most of the time it works pretty well. But honestly, if I'm sitting with super sensitive people,
Hmm.
sometimes I go too far.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just what happens. So my style isn't, I'm not like so slow. Like I know some therapists can be really, really, really slow, and I'm not so slow. I'm a little.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's just what it is. So I have to sometimes recalibrate and understand who's sitting in front of me and try to navigate, because also I've got sometimes two people that are different speeds sitting in front of me. And so trying to work with both of them in a way that's going to be effective is challenging. That's part of their difficulty, is that
Hmm.
their vibrations are not the same.
Yeah.
So trying to work in a way that's going to meet both of their needs and translate between them so that they
Hmm.
don't just repeat what happens at home is part of the work.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's the challenge of couples work, navigating those dynamics and needing to be attuned to both people. How do you do that?
It's this interesting process of like really being, I almost feel like sometimes like a medium. Like if you are really attuned to what is happening in the moment, and then being willing to say what's happening in the moment, that's like, I mean, you hope you're right, because if you're wrong, then it just causes such distance. But if you're right and you say it, it deepens the moment, and then they feel so known, and it really moves the whole thing forward, because you're reflecting what they're experiencing, which feels so validating, and you're helping their partner see it, feel it. And so it just it's like you're facilitating their exchange is ideally what's happening, rather than what they want to do oftentimes is talk directly to me. And I'm trying very much to get them to have an experience with one another, where I'm just coaching them through it and helping them have this experience collectively in vivo, in the room.
Mm-hmm.
That's what really good therapy looks like, so that they have this transformative experience collectively.
Yeah.
But if people aren't used to that intensity, they might try to travel through me emotionally. And so it takes longer to get them practiced at doing that with one another.
Help me understand more the intensity and then traveling through you.
Well, if people aren't used to using I statements, if they aren't used to saying things that are maybe harder, worried about how it's going to land with their partner, then even sustained eye contact, that might feel so hard that they don't ever do it. And so asking them to do it in session might feel impossible. But if I ask them the question, they can tell me the answer, even if their partner's hearing it, but they're not looking at their partner, right? So they'll just look at me, and then we're doing this weird triangle thing that happens. But I can hear it, I can reflect it back to them, and their partner witnesses it. It's not ideal, but at least it's something. But like, we're starting to get them to understand and to experience the reality of what is trying to be understood. And little by little, they can start to do that. I'm modeling for them what ideally they are going to start to do with one another. Right. I'm standing in as a proxy, like to help them. Like I'll prompt them to do some reflective listening sometimes, meaning this is what I heard her just say. Yeah. And if they can't do it, I'll do it. I'll model for them the language. I'll model for them what the partner needs to hear. And I can see the person going, yeah, yes, that's exactly it. Right. And then I know I got it right. So then the partner can do it too. Because so much of this is about, literally, it boils down, couples work that matters boils down to their partner feeling like, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I am literally with you. I am just sitting next to you. I'm emotionally aligned with you. I'm not judging you. I care about you. I can handle, we're going to go through this together. Like, that's what people want to know. That's how they open up sexually. That's how they open up emotionally. That's how they do a whole bunch of other emotional lifting together, is when they feel that connection and that safety.
Yes.
Everything else is possible.
I got the chills when you're talking about that. Yeah, just imagining that. And I mean, my own experience in couples therapy, I think, is just so powerful. I mean, I'm a therapy nerd. I love therapy. I
know, right?
love therapy.
And when it's happening and when it's not, it's just like, what are we doing here? Yeah.
Well, the word that came up for me when you were saying that was that bond is secure. Someone's with you and they got your back, and there's safety, which, if you want to say more about how safety is what's necessary, because then everything else emotionally, sexually can open up from there. How do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the foundational piece that is so critical, because it builds a bridge that then allows the couple to carefully walk across emotionally, to take risks erotically and otherwise. Because when you feel, I mean, from a secure attachment perspective, we look at initial caregivers offer that, right? That we know that the parent-child relationship in that configuration, that they're validating, they're there, they're responsive to needs when we have that cry or whatever. Relationally, that looks like sexually specifically. Like, I've translated all the attachment styles into, I wrote a quiz actually for this, of what's your attachment style and how does that relate to your sexual strategies. And secure is obviously the gold standard. Within the secure attachment style, people can ask for their needs. They can set boundaries and limits. They can hear needs and decline if they do or don't want it. Right? They can tolerate separation. They can witness things and not feel triggered, right? So, like, those are the things we want. And when you can say, come over here and sit down next to me, or let me be with you, or let me hear about your kink. And maybe I'm not into it, but like, let's just entertain it, right? It's like, it's not scaring me. It's like, I'm curious about it. I can be curious. I can be engaged. I can be open-minded to hear your needs, even if I decline them. Or if we're having, because sex therapy a lot of times is about both dissatisfaction and dysfunction. So if
Right.
you're having bodily dysfunction, meaning maybe you can't get an erection, or maybe you're having pain,
Mhm.
or something on the body doesn't work for whatever reason, medical or anxiety or whatever, what
Mhm.
else can we do? But that's also a safety conversation. If we have
Mhm.
enough secure attachment, if we have enough trust, we can go to a plan B and do something different.
Okay, that's interesting. It sounds like you're helping people become, once the safety is an
Establish.
ongoing process. It's a rupture and repair, working with what you got and being
Yeah.
open enough to have those conversations around dysfunction or dissatisfaction, and then opening possibilities that are not talked about usually.
Some of this is nonverbal too, right? It's the touching, it's the eye contact, it's you communicate I'm with you both verbally and nonverbally through actions and through behavioral messaging.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. Holding, that kind of thing.
Okay, now I'm really curious about the I'm with you.
Hmm.
Is that a phrase? Tell me more about that.
That's a phrase that I'm going with. I just have been looking at my work in general, and that's that phrase I'm coining now, that is my signature phrase, because I feel like that's what it comes back to with
Hmm.
couples. That's what they need to feel and to hear. And I just think it's where the gold is with really strong connection.
Yeah, I love that. It feels so good. Even just hearing that, like, just you saying that, oh, I thought that does feel good to even hear
Hmm.
just another human say that.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, this is a vulnerable thing too, just to put my voice out there and just be heard. I mean, coming back to empowerment or whatever it is, just yeah, this is a relationship and we're engaging with each
Hmm.
other. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you mentioned a book, and the phrase that you're coining is "I'm with you." Is there a correlation? Are you writing about that, or what are you exploring?
Well, I'm only in the proposal phase right now, but yeah, that is the premise. So I'm in the
Awesome.
in the process of really expanding on that idea and what does that look like with couples work.
Very cool.
So that will
Yeah.
be taking what I do clinically and then putting it into practice. So that,
Exciting.
because I'm at a place now where I mean I can't see really more clients, like a lot more clients than I do.
Mhm.
So I've got my podcast and I've got my course, which is right now for women, and I do intensives, but I want to really be able to scale up. And so the the way to do that is through books or through speaking. And so I'm looking for ways to build the audience. And so
Mhm.
that would be a good way, I figured, to do that
Yeah.
offering. Yeah.
It makes me also think of the couples research and theories out there like EFT and Sue Johnson, emotionally focused therapy, and Gottman's and Esther Perel. Who are your influences?
Yeah, I have studied a lot of those, and Terry Real as well. I would say all of those. I probably most closely relate to Esther Perel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I love the way she goes at it, and her style is probably the most similar. But I like all of them. I mean, I think they all have value, but in terms of approach and style, I would probably say I'm most similar.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I love her as well. She's so powerful. What about her style resonates or do you identify with?
Uh, I remember years ago, Psychotherapy Networker magazine wrote this article, and it juxtaposed Sue Johnson and Esther, which I thought was so juicy.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I really like EFT, but I found the work really so slow. And that is just stylistically really hard for me. I think there is value in, and I did some of that training for sure. And I've done a lot of Gottman training too, uh, and some Terry Real. But I think the emotional piece is critical, and I think the safety building is critical. However, what I like about what Esther says is that also there has to be some tension. There has to be some passion. We have to know that
Mm-hmm.
the couple doesn't always need to be fused, right? Sometimes there has to be allowance for the separation and the excitement of mystery and novelty. And I see that, right? Is that because most of the couples I'm working with have been together between 10 and 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of familiarity. This isn't a new couple pairing. It's a couple that have so much familiarity that there's boredom.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at trying to reinvigorate. And so I'm interested in those kinds of problems. I also work quite a bit with infidelity, and so does she. And so in those situations where people are trying to repair and stay together after there's been infidelity, that is a unique situation and set of circumstances. And having couples come together after there has been that huge rupture, and even multiple times, looking at how does that happen, and what needs to be present for each party to really trust is unique. And so, yeah, I'm interested in that conversation. And she does write about that too.
Yeah, she does. Well, I'm very curious about how do you work with that in the room?
It's all over the place. I mean, so I have all this training over in another part of my brain. I'm a certified sex addiction therapist, and that is beyond just like a single infidelity. That is a whole profile that looks like sexual compulsion, right? So that looks like a pattern of behavior. So sometimes it's a single infidelity, and then sometimes it's been years and years of compulsion, which might look like chronic porn use. It might look like massage parlors or prostitution or that type of thing. It also might escalate to like friends and coworkers and non-paid type acting out. So each of those three profiles is quite different. And I get curious about who's walking in, what are they carrying, how they acted out matters to how we do treatment. What do they stand to lose if they're in a relationship, which most of them are? That is a factor in terms of how motivated they are to change. Am I just seeing the individual men I see oftentimes are in that population? So that in that case, I'm not doing couples work. I'm working with them individually. But in the case of the couples, when I inherit the couples, first of all, we have to stabilize and do some crisis repair work. But once that is done, and once there's some initial stabilization, because they're not ready to do that out of the gates, right? The betrayed partner needs support and needs grounding, and her whole world, if assuming it's her whole world is blown up. So getting her stabilized, I've worked with all three parties, all three configurations. I've worked with betrayed partners, I've worked with compulsive sexual acting out, and I've worked with the partner or the couples. So the couples, both parties have to be stabilized first. Then when they come back together and they're both in a different place, when the acting out person can take some personal responsibility, when they're not flooded with shame, when they have some insight as to why they did what they did, or they can see their pattern, they're not like in a ton of denial, then they're ready to actually do some empathy towards their betrayed partner, right? They're not trying to minimize, they're in a very different headspace. And they're not just coming back to the relationship because they're so scared or they're so ashamed or they don't want to blow up their whole lives. Rather, they're coming because they choose this person and they are really ready to make a bigger, deeper commitment. That is really important, because if they're just reflexively coming back into the relationship, it's not going to work, because they're going to do it again.
Yeah,
or their partner's so resentful that they're not going to let it go. And so it's a really heated, charged dynamic in those couples. So you got to be like really ready. You got to be ready for those sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine. When you're referencing the stabilization phase or the crisis, do you work separately with each individual before you engage with the couple together?
I usually refer. So in my practice, I've got several clinicians who are trained in the same protocols that I am. And so I will have each of them ideally see their own therapist so that I'm not commingling, because that's a lot of different things going on. So I will have one see the betrayed partner, one see the compulsive sexual person, and then, or I will see one of the units and they will see the couple. Typically we're not, typically we're not commingling.
What does stabilization look like as the couple coming together initially?
So typically the couple, I will see the couple, if the couple calls in and they are thinking they want therapy together, but this is what's just happened, like a discovery has just happened.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, what I do is I bring them in for a consultation just to give them a roadmap so that they have some grounding because they're usually so out of their minds. Like they're like wild eyed and they don't know what to do and they're so afraid and they're just like, so I bring them in, say, this is what I'm hearing. Like, tell me what's happened generally. Here's what I'm thinking makes the most sense. I think you both need to go do some individual work. And
Hmm.
then when we hit certain milestones, we're going to come back together.
Okay.
And maybe if they feel really adamant about it, we might meet occasionally. But the reality is, couples work is contraindicated at that point because
Hmm.
the betrayed partner isn't going to believe anything that they're saying. And for the most part, it might just be a lot of like raging and shaming. And so you're not going to get very far at that point. So it's best to cool it for a little bit and get them both a lot of support first before you
Hmm.
do the couples work. If they absolutely insist, then I'll do check-ins. But you can't really do deep work at that juncture. They're
Hmm.
in too much pain.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you work with each side of that initially, like the betrayed person or the person that was acting out?
Yeah, the betrayed partner. So we have a group here for betrayed partners, and that has been going for a couple of years. Annie Finch runs that at our practice. But the betrayed partner oftentimes didn't have any idea, sometimes did, but oftentimes didn't have any idea. So often feels just really duped and frustrated and embarrassed and
Hmm.
angry. And so there's just so many feelings all at once. And
Yeah.
so those all need to be normalized, validated. There's an arc of like rage
Hmm.
and worry and
Hmm.
sometimes self blame. Sometimes they're like imagining that they're just not enough and that they're not attractive enough and it's because of them. And so just letting them go through that. That's why a group is so good too, because then they get to see other partners and hear their stories and
Hmm.
it expedites some of that process, but also just really understanding that this isn't usually even about them.
Hmm.
It's not about them. It's not about their deficiencies. It's not about anything to do with them.
Hmm.
Even if their partner was dissatisfied in the relationship, they didn't need to handle it this way.
Yeah.
So giving them a forum to talk about it, because a lot of times they're so out of sorts, they don't want to tell their friends, they don't want their community to know. So it's really hard. So giving them space and encouragement and not pushing the needle one way or another about whether they stay or go, but just giving them space.
Totally.
So that is really important, and containment, because that's the other thing is they just feel so they feel
Great.
so they just feel so out of sorts, and so
Yeah.
giving them a space to do that. On
Hmm.
the other side, with the person that's been acting out, helping them start to recognize all the consequences and what this has been doing for them psychologically. And I have a lot of compassion for both parties, honestly, because it seems like it's a lot of fun, but it's actually exhausting being in that role and
Hmm.
looking at how long this is going on, where it came from. I mean, I see it as maladaptive coping,
Hmm.
just like drinking, just like overeating, just like gambling, right? It's they become enslaved to it and it's exhausting, and the secret keeping is typically pretty difficult. And so they don't feel great about themselves, and especially once their partner knows, they feel flooded with shame
Yeah.
and self-disgust, and so they're sitting in a really difficult position and they're in a lot of fear. And
Hmm.
so yes, holding compassion for them and then also starting to give them a pathway to change.
Hmm. And is this the compulsive, more addictive behavior? Is that just like a not a regular affair, but
Yeah.
I'm curious what you would say about why people make that choice and how does someone get there? Is it the quality of the emotional connection? Like, can you say more
It
about that?
depends. I mean, affairs happen for lots of reasons. I mean, if it's a one off thing and it's not a pattern, oftentimes it's not really about the partner. It's more about I think what's going on for them in terms of their own satisfaction with self. Are they trying to prove their own virility? Are they still attractive? Are they bored? Are they Sometimes it's because this other person came into their orbit and they were so compelling and they want to leave the relationship for them. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that does happen,
Mm-hmm.
but oftentimes it's not about that. They don't actually intend to leave. That person was never really viable. It was a fantasy, it was a projection.
Mm-hmm.
It was a frivolous exercise that was risk taking, that was just exciting, but they didn't really play it through in a practical way. And they didn't recognize, it's like they've compartmentalized so much and they didn't realize how hurtful it was going to be to
Mm-hmm.
their spouse and how disruptive it was in their life. And they are just like, no, what have I done? They were just feeding off the thrill, and they didn't really give it a chance to like all sink in as to what their behavior was going to cause.
Mm-hmm.
And so this integration that happens when discovery occurs, and there is just, a panic and just a lot of hard feelings that seem obvious. Like, of course, this was going to happen, but it's amazing how much denial they're living in when they're doing it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wild thing to think about
Hmm.
in terms of
Hmm.
like making a decision like that without thinking through the consequences of,
Well,
yeah.
and sex, sex, including affairs, is not often about sex.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people focus on, is like, it's about the sex. It's not. I mean, affairs are often about power. They're about
Mm-hmm.
feeling important. They're about attention,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're about all these other things. People want to feel wanted. They want to feel valued. They want to feel sexy.
Mm-hmm.
They want to feel they want to feel things. It's not about the orgasm that takes 2 minutes or 5 minutes at best, right? It's not about that. It's about all the payoffs around
Hmm.
it.
Like self-worth and identity and validation and just
Hmm.
being seen on like
Hmm.
a,
Yeah, yeah. So you have to look at the bigger picture. Like, what is the function
mm-hmm.
of the affair, or what is the function of the relationship? What is the function of sex?
Yeah.
Like, those are questions I'm always trying to ask
Mm-hmm.
um, them to
What is the
understand.
function of this? Like, what does it do
Yeah.
for you?
Yep.
Yeah. What do you get from this? Yeah.
And so if I ask it in a non-judgmental way,
Mm-hmm.
then we can get subtraction, because otherwise they're just like sitting in like a ton of like fear and feelings of shame. But if we
Yeah.
can understand that, then we can meet their needs in a more adaptive way that's going to help them move forward.
Yeah, and I imagine like them processing that and slowing it down and talking it through, they start to make different connections of why did I
Yeah.
do that? And now I have more choice over it. It's
Yeah.
going to be a different
Yeah.
choice.
Because if say example, for example, they want attention.
Hmm.
Of course they need attention. And maybe they
Right.
never got that kind of attention and it felt so good and they wanted more of it. Like,
Hmm.
that is something we can all relate to.
Hmm.
And there's room for acknowledgement and compassion in that. They didn't do it in the right way, but
Hmm.
there's understanding as to why they would want that.
Yeah. What a question about just the betrayed partner and what's the psychology of moving from self-blame and maybe low self-worth or low self-esteem about what that action means about them to depersonalizing and not taking it on.
Well, going back to empowerment, is that when she starts to understand, she has, I think the initial shock is there, and the searching for the why, which doesn't immediately come, but eventually she starts to see the bigger picture. And I think when I'm using shorthand for pronouns, but when he starts to have some insight and he can reflect that, she starts to understand too, this
Mm,
is a longer tale to tell. This isn't just about her gaining 10 pounds or her aging. This is about his childhood. This
hmm.
is about him feeling like he might lose his job at work. This is about lots of things that aren't related to her, or maybe are related to her, but aren't her fault. And
Mm-hmm.
so she starts to see that, and sometimes she did leave the relationship in her own way emotionally. Maybe she got distracted with the kids, or maybe she hasn't been into sex in 10 years either.
Mm-hmm.
So there are circumstances where maybe each of them, maybe she didn't cheat, but maybe she hasn't been that present. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not that interested in blame. I'm interested in, if you guys want to continue this relationship in a better form, let's figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they can't do that if there's this big power differential going forward and he's in the doghouse forevermore. That doesn't work.
Right. Right.
I know it's a lot, right?
It's a lot. I mean, I think it gets complicated when there's kids and all that plays out when there's younger
Yeah.
kids. So it makes me curious, what is the best way to handle that going forward in terms of splitting up or working through it all?
Well, with our training, there's a whole protocol for bringing the family in and at certain times, ages of kids, including them and giving them appropriate, age appropriate information. Yeah, because I think there's a lot of countertransference on the part of many therapists,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just like, affairs are out. I mean, sex in general, therapists don't want anything to do with it, but affairs are like, so it's triggering work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot, especially with this topic, there's a lot of emotions in the room
Mm-hmm.
with the couple and with the therapist.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a hard topic. And a lot of people have history in one of the configurations.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty common.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, I remember starting out being a therapist in my later 20s and being terrified of like if sex came up in
Hmm.
therapy. And
Yeah.
now I'm like I'm way more comfortable with it now, and I think that like you have to be. I think there's like but yeah, so anyways, the topic or the subject of betrayal, that like definitely elevates the intensity and the emotions of how to navigate that. Do you like the intensity? Is that something you're drawn to?
Yeah, I would say yes. Yeah, when I've got, towards the tail end of people's work, when not much is happening and it gets conversational
Mm-hmm.
and they just come in and want to like hang out, and I'm like, what are we doing?
Mm.
Don't, what are we doing? No, I don't. That's harder for me because then it's just like, oh no, like we're just shooting the breeze for an hour. I find that I'm clock watching and it's like, I want to do
Mm-hmm.
real work. That's what I'm here for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in, yeah, and the work. And I find that when, not that I want every session to be like crazy, but the more intense work I think is really important and validating when it goes well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I enjoy that.
That's like a personality or like a fit type too, of like who are we as therapists and what are we drawn to and what are we, there's lots of different types of therapy that are so helpful for, just depends.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Your constitution affects your specialty.
It just made me think about fit,
Hmm.
mother, child, or, primary caregiver, child, and the biology, the nature versus nurture. What happens when a child develops insecure attachment or disorganized attachment? Can that come from there being just a mismatch as well?
What I can see, like more in terms of circling back to like the sexual realm, is that what I can see is if you have, and just because I've been looking at, for example, like anxious attachment and how that translates into the bedroom,
Yeah.
right? Or disorganized attachment and how that translates into the bedroom. It
Hmm.
definitely does, because if you have insecure attachment, you're going to have a more difficult time showing up erotically, emotionally. Like anxious attachment, you're going to tend to be a pleaser. You're going to probably give maybe when you don't want to. You might feel like you'll have sex because your partner wants to, and then it's worth the payoff of pillow talk
Hmm.
afterwards. You want that closeness and the cuddling that comes afterwards. There's some things that are predictably like, how do they translate down? Now,
Hmm.
of course, any of these attachment styles are changeable. If you're in relationship with somebody more secure, they
Hmm.
can move more towards secure because you start to relationally have some of that repair happening. But we also see it When I've got somebody who's coming in saying, "Oh, I'm dating the same type of person again." And right, you see that like in the young adults when they're like on their fourth boyfriend over and over again. And you're like, okay, you're doing the same thing because you're
Yeah.
trying to repair this thing that's really an attachment wound. And
Hmm.
so you're going after the unavailable person again, who's
It's a
likely,
repetition.
right, they're probably avoidant. They're probably one of the avoidant types. And so that person, typically the avoidant person is the opposite. They don't want the pillow talk. They might feel okay with the sexual act, but they might not be comfortable, or it might take longer for them to get comfortable with sharing emotionally or deep talks or needs expression or giving critique around sexual performance or any of those types of relational expression, but then also that show up erotically. So when you think about it that way, of course it's going to affect, because these are interpersonal relationships in a more vulnerable context. So like turn the light,
Hmm.
the magnifying glass on what happens in the bedroom, and then it's like, yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shows up very
And
clearly.
in my group, when I would ask, I'd have everybody take this quiz, and then I'd say, okay, now take it through the lens of your partner. And most people would be able to cite, okay, or you could just read the results and know which person is likely, which style is your partner,
Hmm.
because you recognize what does your partner typically do and how
Yeah.
do they show up in relationship. And I think it's just a useful frame. It's not like we're always fixed in one position, but yeah,
Right.
it's predictable.
Hmm. So how would you heal anxious or avoidant attachment or disorganized attachment within the sexual realm or relationship?
Well, I think awareness building, first of all, even knowing when people get the results, they're like, oh, I was anxious. And I'm like, is that a surprise? No,
Right.
no, it's not a surprise because that's who I am in the world. And it's like, okay, so does this serve you, right? Some awareness that it's even happening, first off. And then how does this manifest? So just awareness of how it actually plays out. Do you call? Do you send like 20 texts to your partner? Do
Hmm.
you ask for feedback? Do you maybe give them sex when you don't want to? Do you maybe follow through with sex when it hurts? Those would be ways that maybe an anxious lover might do things that don't serve them. So the
Hmm.
first thing is identifying things that you do that maybe don't serve you. And then the next step might be, well, let's see if we can do some harm reduction, or let's see if we can pull back on some of those things and see how it feels. And then sit with the discomfort of taking contrary action, right?
Hmm.
Do something different, tolerate that, because it starts to build more self esteem when you take care of your own needs. And
Hmm.
once they get that experience, it's like, oh, because the reality, as we know, right, if somebody anxious behaves in a more secure way, they're going to typically get a good reaction,
Hmm.
assuming their partner is relatively secure,
Right.
right? But even from an insecure partner, if an anxious person reacts in a more stable way, an
Hmm.
avoidant person is probably going to come closer to them, right? It's going to get a good reaction
Yeah.
versus if they react more chaotically and in a needy way, which is what they typically would do, it
Hmm.
doesn't get a good reaction. So if
Yeah.
they can tolerate that, it's going to have a good outcome. But
Hmm.
it's helping them have some awareness and some willingness to try something different. And
Hmm.
so the opposite could be true too.
Hmm.
If they're more avoidant, maybe taking small level changes and risks that might get them some emotional payoff that actually feels positive, and that there isn't, you know, a negative. So then it creates a feedback loop that actually is affirming and positive for them.
Hmm. I haven't thought about the anxious and avoidant attachment styles in how it would play out in a sexual relationship. I mean, I have like in individually, but not looking at
Hmm.
that dynamic and how a couple might work on that or become more aware of those and try to take small risks to try to make things better, get their needs met.
I do that game of like where you say anything and at the end you add in bed. Like I do that. I do that to everything.
Wait, what? I don't know what that
You never played that game where it's like, go run a mile in bed? I don't know. There's that game where like you add in bed to everything, like as a sex therapist, of course. And so you do the sexual attachment, or the
is.
attachment
Okay.
style in bed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it is a microcosm. It's
Yeah.
what's playing out in the larger realm of
Hmm.
relationships in a more vulnerable context, very vulnerable context.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not a specialist in trauma, but how do you work with that when people have had boundary violations and sexual trauma? How do you see that playing out in helping someone have a better sexual relationship with their partner or themselves?
Yeah, so I find that so people come into sex therapy through different avenues, and sexual abuse or sexual assault is definitely one of the avenues that bring them in,
Mhm.
or just lack of experience. But traumas can be big T, little t. You know, sometimes it's been humiliation, like or peer experiences that totally did not go well. Any of those are traumas, and so I find that, well, I love EMDR. It's my
Mm.
go-to tool for most of those cases. It's a protocol that was developed for PTSD. And really, these folks are ruminating most of the time on these incidents.
Mhm.
And it, it gets in the way. They can't just, I mean, sex is somatic, right? You're in your body, and they can't be in their body because they're so much in their mind, and the anxiety is just paralyzing.
Mhm.
So I find that if we can go back and lower the distress through the protocol, it's really super helpful.
Mhm.
And then scaffolded approach to like touch and
Mm.
imagining, just not trying to go all in because they'll dissociate or they'll just force themselves through it and it doesn't work very well.
Mhm.
So really going slow. I like to give them so the EMDR first, and once we've targeted the memories that were particularly difficult first. We go there. And then if they're in a partnership, having like sensate focus is a very simple exercise that's
Mhm.
got 4 levels. I have them do one level at a time. A few times we process it to see how it went, which is just light touch. First of all, no genital touching for a while. I also will sometimes do bibliotherapy, which is fancy word for book therapy, where I'll literally show them graphics. I have some tools in the office, like I have dilators if they need to see those, and suggest that they order a kit. I've got different ways of helping women in particular, like get in touch with their body so that they feel like they are in control of their own touch and that they know where what feels good and that they can control the pressure, they can control what's
Mhm.
happening to them because
Mhm.
that feels so different, men and women, but women mostly. So it changes the narrative and it lets her feel like she can re-enter any relationship with a different voice, and it's not this overpowering or passivity. I
Mhm.
think it makes a big difference and
Mhm.
just slow the whole thing way down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very reparative to do it that way. That's what I
Mhm.
found.
Yeah. What's a dilator in this context?
A dilator, okay, so it's a kit that comes and they have like maybe 8 or 9 sizes. And they
Mhm.
start, the first size is like the size of your pinky. And then
Mhm.
they go progressively up. And they're
Mhm.
silicone and they are for internal use.
Mhm.
And they just help start to stretch
Oh.
and start to feel what it feels like to have penetration in a safe, controlled way. So they have like a little, they're just like, they basically look like this. So there's just like a little handle and then the thing sticks up and she would insert it with lube and just explore her own body.
Mm.
And so she can feel some comfort. I mean, it's smaller than a small tampon. It's really tiny. So because some women can't, after those kinds of situations, they can't accommodate anything. And so
Mhm.
starting externally.
Mhm.
And then I've also got wands. There's wands that are made that have vibration and warming just to help with blood flow, help with sensation. I mean, there's just a lot of like slowing it down, helping feel like they have control and agency to reintroduce any tension or sensation
Mhm.
to their genitals.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's interesting to
Yeah.
hear a sexologist's perspective on it.
Yeah, because it's a mind, but it's also body. So there's the physical piece, but there's
Mhm.
also the mental piece, and then there's the emotional piece because journaling is going to be helpful. of course, talking about it, but the processing I think is primary. Doing that EMDR first, I think, is going to be really important. And if there's a partner involved, having all of that be consensual and be discussed, and I think it's going to be critical.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, I think I got all my questions down. What are you excited about, or that feels juicy, or anything that I
Well,
don't know?
I'm excited because my course is finally out. Like, I've been running this live version of Pleasure Circle, which is a 6-week intensive for women who want a better sex life. I've been doing that for about 3 years, and now I've recorded the course and it's available online. It's less expensive. It's there for women they have 3 months to go through the course, and it's awesome. It's like all my lectures are recorded. All the questions I would normally put out there are available in worksheets. There's like 30 worksheets. I have a lot of questions. And that's all available now. So that's at pleasureproject.us.
Awesome.
So that's there. And then also my podcast is all
Yeah.
about sex and relationships. And that's also Pleasure Project on Spotify or Apple. So yeah.
Go check it out. Yeah. I listened to one of the episodes the other night. It was really good about, oh, I commented it on YouTube.
Oh, you did great.
Yes, yeah, it was Dr. Was it Shermer or um
What was the topic? Do you remember?
it was shame and
Oh,
sexuality,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
season 2 maybe. Anyways, it's a great podcast, so go check it out. All right, Jen, thank you so much for doing this, and it was great talking to you today.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thanks
Okay.
for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Say More, a podcast about the kinds of conversations that invite us to go deeper. A mentor once told me the goal of therapy is to say everything. That stayed with me, because what heals us isn't just insight. It's the moment we say what once felt unsayable out loud to another person. So my invitation to you is this: stay curious, be brave, and say more. If you'd like to learn more about my work or get in touch, you can visit KristinaRadnoti.com. Thanks for listening.